Коллеги, добрый день. Мы просим прощения, кто попозже присоединился. Мы начнем ровно через 7 минут, в 10:45. Потому что мы ждем коллег, кто припаздывает. И с техникой никак, вот видите, не можем справиться.
Спасибо.
Сейчас Иван наказал. Вчера так было. Нет, он был. Алло, Иван, вы тут? Иван, вы тут? Алло.
And some information for our Italian colleagues, because I see Donatella who join us. We start in 7 minutes. So we apologize, but we have some problems with the sound at our equipment. Donatella, do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Hello, Natalia. I'm here too. We can hear you.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Flaminia. I don't see you, and
Don't worry. Don't worry. We'll wait. No problem.
it's terrible.
Don't worry.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody.
Hello, Natalia. I'm here too. We can hear you. Hi.
Раз. Видите?
Раз. А теперь там вообще не слышно?
Нет, здесь слышно?
Нет, вот здесь.
Слышно?
А почему там не слышно?
Нет.
А что за запоздание такое? А что это он запаздывает так? Полминуты запоздания.
Нет, это участник. Это какая-то новая история. Такого еще не было.
Коллеги, добрый день, я с вами.
Добрый день.
Раз. Раз. Ну, там слышно, а вот здесь. Здесь же должно еще слышно быть. Раз. Здесь же должно слышно. Раз.
Наконец-то.
Что-то я не понял. А как? Что? Как он запаздывает на 15 секунд? Я уже интернет передергиваю. Вот причем видно, все нормально. А звук почему отстает? Раз.
Вот, слышно.
Здесь, да.
Это я же как участник.
А почему я как организатор запаздывал звук? Раз. А почему я как организатор? Ну, это он. Как меня слышно?
Слышно хорошо. Если меня слышно.
А тут ничего.
Вот. Вроде нет еще.
Как меня слышно?
Слышно хорошо.
На всю страну позорюсь.
Если слышно.
У тебя есть телефон написано?
Нет, звук не идет.
No? Don't you listen?
Увеличьте полностью. Вот.
Do you hear me?
Фонит просто.
So we try to organize a good translation. That's the problem. I'm sorry again.
Куда этот фон?
Вы вводите
Они видят, что еще раз
этот компьютер принципе.
А там у них два? Давай.
Или, может быть, не говорить на компьютер.
это есть.
Ну, читаем до сегодняшнего дня. Иван,
Да.
может быть, мне так получится с компьютера, потому что я говорю компьютер.
Сейчас Асим принесет ноутбук, тот старый. Попробуем так.
Ну, попробуйте, да. Асим задал засаду.
Ну, что-то вообще.
Colleagues, can I ask you, if you hear me better like this, probably we can start without my video on the screen. So like this, we can start at least. If you hear me in bad way too, we are waiting our colleague and we change our equipment.
Yes, we can hear you much better, Natalia, this way.
Это что? Как? Я что-то с ноутбуков вообще был. Сейчас на старом все было нормально. Сейчас подключено. Ничего. Это оно?
Вы зайдите, а вас организатор.
Сейчас прогрузится.
Не знаю. Так что надо? Вот это сохранить чат, вот, чтобы мне Надьке послать. Сейчас. Прям даже неприятное чувство разговора.
Таня Забелина, я тебя слышу. вообще посмотри на чат. Я послала тебе личное послание.
Ага.
Прекрасная аватарка у тебя. Потрясающая аватарка.
Спасибо.
Открой личико, Гульчита.
Ты слышишь, нет?
Слышу, очень хорошо слышу,
Ну,
Танечка.
слышишь меня, да? Ну хорошо.
Да,
Я
слышу.
сейчас осваиваю, пытаюсь написать.
Да, у тебя получится. Я знаю, что ты девочка очень грамотная.
Спасибо.
Не стоит. Великолепные фотографии, Танечка.
Спасибо.
Да это не мне спасибо, фотографу.
Я тогда моложе, я лучше, кажется, была.
Качеством. Неправда. Я любительница коньяка. Знаю точно. Чем больше настоен, тем больше дистиллирован. Оптимизм. А, вот я вижу. Да написал Танечка.
Алло, алло, слышно?
Да, больше того, я уже читаю твою.
Ага.
Сейчас я... Угу. Замечательно. Волнуешься, значит, жива, Тань.
Ладно. Надеюсь, что так.
А кто ж не волнуется? Таня, почему ты в этом? Включи видео и видео.
У меня пока нет. Я
Ты
потом,
тогда...
к моменту
Может...
выступления, надеюсь, сумею.
Ой, все понятно. А у нас, знаешь, 30 градусов мороза с утра.
А, ты же на даче, ну да.
Я на хуторе, я хуторянка. Чем и горжусь.
Кошмар.
Совершенно не совпадает те сообщения из гидрометцентра. Слышишь меня, Танюша?
Да, да. Ну, у нас вроде как показывало 17.
Нет, совершенно точно. У меня тоже было сомнение, ну, вот на протяжении всей недели, когда говорили, что по Москве там 15, у нас было минимум 25. Вот, потом. А сегодня утром 30, и уже через некоторое время потеплело. Стало 28, потом даже 25, да.
Ну, это очень много.
Ничего.
Тем более вы все-таки юг, можно сказать, области-то.
Не, мы точно юго-запад.
Ну, юго-запад, да.
Да,
Ой,
да.
это у нас там тоже, наверное, все деревья померзнут.
Ну, зато, знаешь, несколько дней потрясающее небо, голубое, ни одной тучки, светло, щиплет, глаза болят, потому что слишком яркое солнце.
Да, солнце, мне тоже тяжело, когда солнце такое.
Вот.
Что-то вместо тебя, то есть ты теперь у меня на полном экране.
Правда?
А
Ну,
вот,
потому что мы с тобой разговариваем.
Там, где было твое изображение, возникло только это.
Что?
Ну, знак этого института. А он что-то никак не наладит связь там, да? Похоже.
Ну, я хочу сказать, мы живем всего-навсего в 21 веке, что ж тут поделаешь? Так бывает.
Да.
Ничего страшного. Ну, видишь, пандемия имеет свои положительные результаты.
Ну, вот то, что да, возможность такая, это очень здорово. Иначе на YouTube идет запись, ты имей в виду.
Ну, а я не собираюсь попадать под административное преследование, употреблять исконную, так сказать, неисконную лексику.
Да, исконно-посконно.
Да, я побоялась это слово.
Раз.
Так, ну все, наверное, выключаемся, да?
Нет, ну организатор тогда даст отмашку, не переживай, Танечка. Да. Хоть имея возможности поговорить. Замечательно.
Ну да.
Куда?
Я вот вижу тут вообще никого больше, я что-то не вижу знакомых-то.
А, ты же там это на минимум выкрутил.
Видишь как, это еще организаторы в нашу беседу с тобой вклиниваются. Вот. Как внучок? Как Ленечка?
Да ничего, так не растет. 5-й год.
Растет? Ну, тут уже никак не попрепятствуешь.
Ну, он сейчас дома, не ходит в садик пока. Мороз сильно решили пока его поддержать.
И правильно. Ты знаешь, я вспоминаю в детстве, но я очень огорчалась, когда было больше 25, и в школу не пускали, я просто плакала. Горько.
Не, а он не любит.
Не любит?
Он как раз очень рад, что он дома.
Да? А как очарование, моя любовь, Натали?
Ну, так она с ним в основном сейчас, жена.
Да? Но уже хочет, рвется на работу или не очень?
Нет, абсолютно не рвется.
Вот молодняк пошел, а?
Да.
Не в маму.
Да.
Не в маму. Но она будет работать.
Не знаю. Это очень трудно.
Так, теперь мне, пожалуйста,
Регламент.
звук включите, чтобы меня слышали.
Ну, включен.
Включен.
Ну, надо знать, они слышат вас.
So, I would like again to ask everybody if you hear me finally or not.
Ну, у других включен звук, они не реагируют.
Do you hear me, colleagues?
Yes, we hear you.
Коллеги, слышно меня или нет?
Наталья Николаевна, я слышу вас. И я так понимаю, что все слышат вас.
Хотя прошло сообщение о том, что организатор отключил мой, например, звук, говорит Шведова. Организатор, наверное, должен всех отключить, кроме говорящего, мне так кажется. Опыт показывает.
Прекрасно. Коллеги, еще раз, я тогда скажу несколько слов сначала на русском, поприветствую всех наших коллег, на всякий случай, вдруг не все говорят по-английски. Еще раз приносим свои извинения за вот эти технические неполадки, но то ли мороз повлиял, то ли космос не хочет, чтобы мы с вами обсуждали гендерные проблемы, но будем надеяться, что все у нас будет хорошо. Еще по поводу некоторых технических вещей обращаю внимание коллег, которые присоединились к нам онлайн, что мы тоже слышим все ваши беседы, в том числе частного характера. Поэтому, пожалуйста, помните о том, что вот сеть работает именно таким образом. И не забывайте, пожалуйста, отключать свои микрофоны, когда активный докладчик не вы, потому что из-за этого создаются дополнительные шумы. Ну и сейчас я тогда уже перейду на английский для наших зарубежных коллег, хотя тоже к русскому, наверное, буду возвращаться. It's time to start. Finally, all is okay with our equipment, I hope. And I see that today among us a lot of people, not from all of Russia, but also from different countries of the world. And I see my dearest Italian friends, my dearest friends from India and from Armenia. And I'm sure that the discussion today will be very interesting and prosperous. And first of all, of course, I would like to salute everybody. And those who are not afraid of the strong frost and finally get our institute. And I would like to introduce you, my colleagues from Institute of Social and Political Research, and also our friendship organization, Institute of Demographic Studies. And near me, you can see Vice Director of this institute and also Director of the Institute of Demographical Studies. And I'm sure he will say some kind words for the participants. Besides this, I'm very glad to see among the participants of this conference the men. And it shows that gender problems today not only issue for women, but also it become very serious scientific problems for all scientific society and communities. And besides this, I'm very glad to underline that it's first event when we try to unit to combine in one group researchers and scholars from researching organizations, from universities, and I would like to thank all of our colleagues from Kuban University, from Russian State University for the Humanities, our colleague from Touche University from Viterbo, Italy, and I would like to say a lot of kind words for our colleagues from research committee about the gender politology from Russian associations of political sciences. And here also you can see my colleague who is the member of this committee, Olga Charova, and also some of her colleagues they are online with us, and some of these researchers, very famous researchers in Russia, they will join us a little bit later. And I don't like to be very long, because we have today a lot of very interesting papers, and I prefer to leave sometimes for discussions. But before we start, I would like to give the floor, give the microphone to Sergei Ryazantsev, because Institute of Demographic Studies also dealing with gender problem. It's evident. Sergei, please.
Спасибо. Доброе утро. Good morning, dear colleagues. Я хотел бы сказать несколько приветственных слов в связи вот с такой очень, как мне кажется, актуальной и важной конференцией, которую сегодня проводит Институт социально-политических исследований Российской академии наук. И политика гендерного равенства не случайно рассматривается на этой конференции, на этой важной конференции, потому что этой темой сегодня пронизана вся наша жизнь, и всем хорошо известно, что одна из целей устойчивого развития, которая декларирована Организацией Объединенных Наций, как раз предусматривает достижение гендерного равенства в мире и в странах мира. А наш институт, Институт демографических исследований, прямо и косвенно затрагивает многие вопросы, которые так или иначе касаются вот достижения этой цели устойчивого развития. Мы в наших исследованиях рассматриваем прежде всего положение женщины в семье, вопросы ранних браков, вопросы внебрачной рождаемости, вопросы добровольности вступления в брак. Все эти проблемы, которые актуальны практически для всего мира, для всех регионов России, имеют такое этническое, культурное измерение, политическое даже как измерение часто. Кроме того, наш институт, конечно, касается проблем, связанных с вопросами предотвращения женского насилия, потому что насилие в семье над женщинами, потому что эта проблема тоже как никогда актуальна. У нас даже готовится такая диссертация с социально-демографическим аспектом этой проблемы. И все мы знаем, что сегодня в общественном и политическом дискурсе в России, да и в ряде постсоветских стран, и даже не только в постсоветском пространстве, эта тема очень остра, она крайне актуальна. Доходы, занятость, трудовая миграция, все эти вопросы тоже нам непосредственно близки, мы ими активно занимаемся, публикуем целый ряд исследований очень активно. И я надеюсь, что вот конференция, которую сегодня проводит коллектив Института социально-политических исследований, мы будем продолжать взаимодействие по исследованию этих проблем, по совместным публикациям, подготовке совместных публикаций, разработке научно-исследовательских проектов в этой сфере. И, наверное, конечно, нельзя не сказать про ситуацию, связанную с ковидом, потому что женщины тоже подверглись рискам, значительным рискам. И вот исследования, например, показывают, что, учитывая, что во всем мире почти 60% женщин было вовлечено в неформальные отношения сегмента экономики, то женщины стали очень уязвимой группой, потерявшей занятость и доходы, но при этом ответственность за семью, за детей никто с женщины не снимал. Вот эти все вопросы, мне кажется, нужно изучать, и я хочу поприветствовать всех участников конференции. I would like to say welcome every participants from all countries which described Natalie before, and I hope this meeting will be put a large, huge impact to develop of research in social, political, and demographic sphere around gender equality in Russia and post-Soviet countries as well. Thank you very much. Спасибо большое.
Thank you so much, Sergey, and I would like to to add that Sergey has already articulated all the topic we will discuss today. So he spoke about COVID consequences, he spoke about inequality, which can be described in different ways. And he spoke about demographical problems that also cannot be analyzed, excluding gender approach, etc., etc. And now I think it's time to start our discussion, to start to speak seriously about this problem deeply. And I'm very glad to give the floor to our colleagues from Kuban University with the paper which is devoted to his very interesting research project about digital political content in internet and in some political and social movements. Please, who will be the speaker? Olga or Anna, who is ready?
Good morning. Morning, colleagues. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today. My name is Malasheva Olga Petrovna, and I'm an associate professor at Kuban State University. And today I'm going to present the results of our work. I'm a part of the research team, and I represent the School of Internet Linguistics and Political Science. So today I'm going to talk about the innovative data science methodology used to study online political content. Let me show you my screen. Could you please allow me to show my screen so that I can share presentation with you?
Yes, just a moment.
Okay, right. Thank you. Can everybody hear me well?
No, there is no presentation.
Oh, it's coming, but can you hear me well?
Yes, we hear you well.
More or less.
Okay.
Others I'm not sure.
Okay, so just a moment. It takes some time to start it, just I suppose in a second. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Good, thank you for support. I'm a little bit nervous today. Okay, I divided my talk into three main parts. Firstly, I'll talk about the challenges of digital era and the necessity to study online content and digital socio-political agenda. Then I'll give an overview of data science methodology we use for analyzing online political content. And finally, I'll explain how we apply this methodology to study the Women's March movement and explain why it became so popular and gained global acknowledgement. Okay, let's start with the challenges of digital era. Progressive transformations in the socio-political life and digitalization in particular caused the necessity of studying online political content, and I'm going to explain why. The total number of online users accounts for approximately 5 billion people. Internet users who are socio-political actors generate and share vast bulks of network data via social networking platforms, video sharing sites, or mailing services. The overall amount of internet traffic totals to 100,000 gigabytes per second and more than 6 billion gigabytes per day. So how and why shall we study online content? Due to global digitalization, the online space has become an extension of the socio-political space. Online content shapes interdiscourses and forms discursive fields that in turn trigger discussions that form new discursive field. In other words, content creates content. Users, when producing, consuming, and sharing content, are in some sort of discursive interaction. The result of their interaction is accumulated as online political capital, that is, ability to influence political decisions, which can be converted into offline political capital, that is, social action in real life, which means that virtually any kind of online content, which is no longer controlled by its creator and acquires new meanings and attitudes while shared, can become socially significant political content and a powerful tool capable of influencing people's decisions both in the online and offline space and trigger social action. Discursive fields attract new users by relevant content. Participants of the discursive interaction share their attitudes and opinions on a variety of topics, which increases the sense of community. As the degree of credibility within a particular discursive field is rather high, online users are likely to change their social values and behavioral patterns according to the trend set by the opinion leaders within a discursive field, or because they observe certain group behavior of other users, known as information cascades. These discursive fields have a high potential to trigger social action, which can lead to constructive or destructive transformations of socio-political systems. The mechanism is rather straightforward. Online political content determine the format and the subject matter of socially significant socio-political discourses, which make up discursive fields and constitute the digital socio-political agenda. The digital socio-political agenda is a complex construct which accumulates online political capital of all the discursive fields which contribute to its formation. This online political capital, which has the power to change attitudes and socio-cognitive patterns of behavior, leads to constructive and destructive social action, which causes certain transformations of socio-political systems. A vivid example of such process is the development of the Women's March movement and massive public outcry resulting in better awareness and significant changes in socio-political life. Modern trends in communication, technological opportunities of the online space, as well as socio-political situation in general, have altered the ways the socio-political agenda is created. At the moment, socially significant online content is mainly generated, spread, and consumed via social media. Hashtagization has become an effective means of agenda setting. The development and increase in popularity of such social movements as Me Too, Women's March, Black Lives Matter, whose activities stirred massive public outcry, is caused by the digital socio-political agenda saturated with socially significant hashtags. As digital socio-political agenda is capable of producing and forwarding constructive as well as destructive social practices in the online and offline space, and it is basically big data, it is essential to develop an innovative theoretical approach and complex research method that would allow studying online political content, as well as structural, procedural, and contextual components involved into the digital socio-political agenda setting, and evaluate its pragmatic potential to trigger social action. So let me move on to research methods. The methodology we applied is based on structural network analysis, analytical graph visualization, cluster analysis, folksonomy analysis, and complex linguodiscursive analysis, providing interpretation and deeper understanding of data collected and visualized at previous stages. Network analysis is an effective operative analytical tool which utilizes the mathematical language of graph theory and of metrics and relational algebra. Network analysis involves presenting social processes or discourses as graphs where actors are depicted as nodes and their relations as lines among pairs of nodes. Network analysis enables study of how the social structure of relationships around a person, group, or organization affects behaviors and attitudes, structurally bounded purposive actions, and how structurally bounded purposive actions may affect the social structure and vice versa. Big data cannot be analyzed by means of traditional methods that imply continuous sampling of data. So we apply a research which means identifying an entry point, collecting data, visualizing the obtained data sets via graph visualization software, cluster analysis, and interpreting the obtained social graphs. An entry point, as you can see on the slide, is a criterion which allows us to identify a vector for retrieving data. Types of entry points can range from a particular social network insight or type of data to a keyword, topic, named entity, date, or hashtag. Identification of an entry point is the most efficient approach to big data analysis, as it enables targeted mining of relevant data. Such approach is particularly useful when we analyze past data, and the outcome depends on the processing time. Okay, and now let's look at the analysis of Women's March case. Women's March is the movement around which women's activism galvanized in the recent years. It united Me Too, Time's Up, and other movements which support women politicians, lawmakers, farmers, small business owners, civil societies, activists, and many others to claim human rights and to be heard. So what makes the social movement so vibrant? To study the digital socio-political agenda formed by Women's March movement, we conducted a study and applied the described hybrid methodology. In January-June 2018, our research team collected an empirical base comprising network data retrieved from Twitter through a Twitter application programming interface. The empirical sample which we obtained comprises messages posted by Twitter users, the dynamics of answers, emoji, information about the users who posted these messages, hashtags, and frequently used words and collocations. We analyzed the empirical sample, which included hashtags used by Twitter users in their posts together with the Women's March hashtag within the given period. We formed a data set which included 467 nodes, which stand for hashtags, and 1,154 links, which represent their relations. The dataset also contained information about hashtag interactions and the users, which made it possible to analyze their activity as a social graph, visualize the digital socio-political agenda created by the movement, and identify its dominating themes. On the slide, you can see the visualization of the discursive field formed by this movement, and each node represents a particular hashtag. The colors show that these clusters are separate and involved into a particular discourse. For example, women's rights or Time's Up. Okay, let me continue. Via Gephi visualization software, we constructed a social graph, Women's March, which you actually can see on the slide. Using the Force Atlas 2 mathematical layout procedure, we carried out spatial distribution of nodes to visualize the nature of the relations between the hashtags. I'm going to explain how it works. The proximity of nodes indicates the thematic proximity of the messages in which these hashtags were used. The diameter of a node reflects the importance of a given node, hashtag, that is a topic, in comparison with other nodes or topics represented by the graph. To identify the thematic basis of the Women's March social graph or discursive field, we applied a filter and obtained the thematic core. Through cluster analysis, we obtained the visualization of 8 major clusters or discursive online communities. which you can see on the slide. The analysis of the given graph allowed us to describe the model of the Women's March movement, depicting its main actors, direct and indirect participants, as well as potential points of growth, that is, prospective participants of the movement, users who consume and spread the content generated by the movement, yet who are not actively involved into the movement itself. The visualization of the thematic basis of the Women's March discursive field showed that the distribution of topics is rather uneven. Some clusters, discourses, and topics are intertwined, while others are diametrically opposed. Such clusters as, for example, Women's March 18, Women's Rights, Time's Up, are really close to each other, which means that the topic discussed in these discursive communities overlap, while such clusters as job and end violence against women are really far from the core. Job and power to the polls are diametrically opposed, which means that the topics discussed in these communities are never used in one message. It means that the content generated by the social movement is not static. It's dynamic regarding the multiple discussions that it generates. By applying linguo-discursive analysis to the clusters, we interpreted the discussions and identified main development vectors. So let me move on and be more specific. Women's March 18 is the center of the discursive core of the Women's March discursive field. The central hub is Women's March 2018, which was used to mock up all the protests, events, and messages of the Women's March movement in 2018. Apart from protests, Women's March 2018 discourse is devoted to the discussion of the topics presented on the slide. The subject matter of the given cluster is binding and dominant in terms of shaping the discursive vectors in other clusters, due to central position of the Women's March 2018 cluster and its high connectivity degree, which can explain popularity of Women's March movement itself. Me Too is a discursive community which reflects the activity of the Me Too movement. The subject matter of the Me Too cluster is focused on the presented topics. You can see them on the slide. Me Too cluster is directly linked to the center of the discursive field, which is Movement March 2018. Nevertheless, these two clusters are separate and distinct. The separation is based on the fact that the opinion leaders of two clusters, these are celebrities from all over the world or popular bloggers, are not directly connected to each other and they do not directly interact. Their fans, who are numerous, join the discourse, which is directly connected with their icon. However, some readers and followers who support their ideas, more ideas rather than celebrities, join both discourses as they feel that the ideas and attitudes expressed in both communities coincide. Thus, both discursive communities get new participants. Women's rights is the discourse that is directly linked to the Women's March 2018 cluster. The idea of the women's rights hashtag is to mock up all the pieces of content whose subject matter is connected with women's rights and the prospects of women could have. But apart from that, you can see that they discuss a variety of topics presented on the slide. The analysis showed that the founders and consumers of the Women's March content are actively involved into common socio-political agenda, which comprises women's rights. Nevertheless, the distinction between these discourses and online communities is quite clear. Common subject matter might be endorsed by many online users. However, not all of them are the women's rights movement supporters or actors. Next cluster is Time's Up, and it's a discursive community discussing the following issues. You can see them on the slide. The major hubs of this discursive core are gender equality, as you can see, and he for she. The He for She stands, which stands for an international project of the United Nations organization comprising more than 1 billion participants, proves that Time's Up movement, though directly linked to the Women's March discourse, is also supported by online users who may not be its active participants. Cluster European Development Days 18 is a discursive community whose activity reflects preparations and procedures of the European Development Days in 2018. Its main focus in 2018 was women and girls at the forefront of sustainable development. The visualization shows that the consumers of the content produced within the Women's March 2018 cluster joined the discourse marked up with the European Development Days 18 hashtag and vice versa, which proved that participants of the Women's March 2018 discourse and European Development Days 18 forum participants shared opinions and had similar topics. Though the scale of this cluster is really though the discussions within these clusters are really intense, the scale, as you could see from the first picture, discursive core, is rather small. I would like to end my presentation and my talk saying that the job discourse, discursive community, which you can see on the slide, it's green, is at the periphery of the discursive core and is indirectly through the Time's Up discourse, he for she discourse linked to the Women's March discourse. Nevertheless, this peripheral discourse can be, as well as the discourse and violence against women, you can see it on the slide and it is pink. These two discourses can become a new point of growth for the Women's March movement and contribute to the formation of the Women's March digital political agenda. Okay, let me summarize the main points by saying that the conducted research reveals the opportunities and prospects of application of the hybrid methodology to study political content produced by modern social movements in the online space. Further research could focus on the analysis of political content dynamics produced by an individual, organization, community, or a movement, and the analysis of online network data viewed as a multi-layer network entities. Analysis of socio-political agenda formed by online discursive communities allows us to identify links between the online discourse and social movement dynamics in the offline space as well. Timely identification of destructive online discursive practices can allow us to neutralize destructive social action in real life and enhance the constructive development vector. That's all I have time for. Thank you. I'm happy, me and my colleague, Anna Alexandrovna, will be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Olga. Thank you very much. And also I would like to thank your co-authors. And now we have some time for questions. So colleagues, please, if you have any questions.
Would you like me to clarify any points connected with the research methodology or the findings?
I think so. I think so, because this method and this methodology can be used not only for this issue, but for any question if we study discourse, especially discourse in internet space, so in open informational space. So it would be
absolutely. You're absolutely right, because we also tested this methodology, analyzing the discourse connected with political campaigns, Donald Trump campaign in particular. And we also analyzed discourse which was initiated by this COVID-19 pandemic issue. So it is really useful, and how to put it, it allows us to see the whole picture. It's not a one-sided approach. It's not one-sided view on the problem. We can see and identify the issues which are not that obvious.
Коллеги, если возможно, я бы хотела добавить ответ Ольги Петровны. Да, действительно, эта методология была разработана нами в 2018 году. Мы решили ее опробировать на исследовании Women's March, да, которое на тот момент казалось одним из основных прорывных общественно-политических движений в международной и мировой практике. Ольга Петровна сказала, что вот с коллегой Натальей Анатольевной Рябченко они изучали и изучают, продолжают изучать дискурсивное поле коронавируса и поправки Конституции в прошлом году в Российской Федерации. Исследование проводится, анализируются официальные дискурсы, гражданские сетевой дискурсы, находятся линии пересечения и точки разлома, скажем так. Мы с коллегами, с Ольгой Геннадьевной, Натальей Николаевной и Сергеем Валентиновичем исследуем таким образом государственную семейную политику в Российской Федерации. Исследование у нас сейчас завершается. Да? Мы анализируем официальные дискурсы в отношении семейной политики. И гражданский сетевой дискурс, и тоже будем визуализировать данные и находить линии пересечения, точки разлома. Хочу также сказать, что с коллегами, то есть у нас коллектив лингвисты-политологи, очень интересное сотрудничество. В прошлом году мы также, Ольга Петровна об этом сказала, исследовали дискурсивное поле, которое формировалось в американской политике Трампом, одним из кандидатов, да, на тот момент президентом. И у нас эмпирические данные были за март и за июнь, и в июне мы уже понимали, что произошел разлом дискурсивного поля, и Трамп выборы не выиграет. То есть эта методика очень хорошо еще работает как прогнозная аналитика. Спасибо.
Спасибо большое, Анна. Thank you so much. And it's very interesting that you also launch some new projects using this methodology. And you know that today we will discuss also the COVID problems also in public discourse, and some political issues in public discourse. And I'm sure that all of our colleagues, especially my colleagues in Italy, that have some kind of this project too. They will be interesting to share their results and to know in details also your results. And that's why I have an idea and proposal to gather some kind of round table in 1 month or 2 months to discuss especially COVID problem in public discourse, because I see that we have a very interesting project, but very different ones. So we have opportunity like this to look at this situation from different points of view and from different methodological approaches. So it's really very, very interesting. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you.
Спасибо. Спасибо еще раз. And as I see our colleague from Armenia, Ashot, disappeared. It seems he had some problems with connection in Armenia. That's why I would like to give the floor to our colleague from India. It seems she's here. It's Dr. Ranjana Singha. Are you here? Ranjana? Mrs. Singh, у нее такой без имени аккаунта присоединялась, там какой-то странный была.
Да, я видела, но сейчас, может, ее выкинула? Иногда бывает, что Zoom выбрасывает.
She was with us, but now we can't see her. Ranjana, are you connected? I don't see. So probably I can ask Flaminia to start now.
Natalia, can we swap a minute? Because I need 5 more minutes on another meeting, if you don't mind. Sorry about this. Is that all right with you?
Sure, we're waiting for you, and for the moment I try to call to our colleagues in Armenia and India.
Thank you very much. Sorry about this. I'll be back in 5 minutes.
Today, technique. Коллеги, пока мы ждем присоединения наших итальянских друзей, может быть, у вас тоже есть какие-то вопросы, комментарии к предыдущему выступлению, соображения?
Наталья Михайловна, там Индия просто.
Присоединилась. Ранжана?
Не, Дибаджоти.
Нет, он после.
Что подключилось?
Один несколько сейчас.
Это друг.
Да, но не сейчас.
Да, вот он.
So, while we are waiting for Flaminia, I would like to give the floor to our colleague from Institute of Europe. He is not today our paper giver, but he is very interested in gender problem, I'm sure, because he works at the Institute of Europe, and you know that Europe, in fact, is the main center of studying gender issues, and the main center where in political spheres this topic is really very actual. So, Boris, if you would like to salute everybody and to say any words, I ask you to join us.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Boris Pistrelov. I'm Doctor of Political Science, and I work in the Institute of Europe of the Department of Political Studies. And for this reason, my main topic is studying European political party in different countries and all of the Europe as well. But the gender problems, it's in the focus also in our studies. And for example, some months ago, I'm preparing the article about concerning of the consequences of last European elections, which was held in 2019. And after that, as you know, the many changes was in the main European political institution. I mean, European Commission, for example, as you know, the first time the chair of this commission is a lady, Ursula von der Leyen from Germany. And it's interesting that she tried to have a balance, gender balance in her commission. And the first draft of the list of members of this commission, it was a 50-50 between men and women. But unfortunately, after some discussions in the European Parliament, because each member of this commission was appointed, informally appointed by European Commission, European Parliament, that this balance was a little bit changed, and now it seems that 15 or 14 members is men and 20 or 30 is women. But it seems a very good balance for key European institution, the European Commission. The same thing is now in European Parliament also. It's new new stage of European after the European election, and the European Parliament now also is some changes. I mean, the gender policy, and for example, some leader of political groups, for example, Party European Socialists, now leading by Madame Perez from Spain. As I know, the lady from Germany is leading by Green political group, and etc., etc. And I think it's a very good tendency in European policy, because it was a big problem, as you know, that the number of women in the European Parliament and the European Commission was very few some years ago. Now the situation completely changed, and I think that it's interesting, and maybe we can continue the studies concerning of gender balance in political institution and political party in Europe, together with our colleague from Russian Institute of Social and Political Studies, and some colleagues from foreign institutions. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Boris. And we only hope the gender balance finally will appear also in Russia. But for the moment, we can only dream about that. But we do all of our best to change situation. And now I guess Flaminia is ready. Flaminia, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Just 1 second, and I'll get my my slides. I had a problem as I wrote to you on WhatsApp, but I'm resolving right now. Just a few seconds, please, and I'll be with you.
Today is a very strange day. Everybody has problems. Everybody.
Sorry about this. I'll be with you in a minute with all the slides. Hopefully there will not be a problem with those.
Flamini, if you want, we can try to
I'm here. Just 1 second.
Download your presentation if you prefer.
I'm trying to share it. Let's see if it works. Oh, are you going to do it for me?
If you prefer, we can do that.
Well, is it? Can you all see it? Because I've tried to share.
Yes, we see it. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for this delay. I've had a problem this morning, and now I solved it. I hope. So, good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here today, and thank you very much for Professor Natalia Velikaya's invitation. Today we're presenting the data deriving from a research project of national interest funded by the Italian Ministry of Education. I present it today with my postdoc who's working on this project, and her name is Donatella Selva. The title of the project is The Transformations of Democracy, Actors, Strategies and Outcomes of the Opposing Populism in the Political, Judicial and Social Arenas. I coordinated for the Tuscia University Research Unit, and Professor Carlo Ruzza is the national coordinator. And the title of today's presentation is Women Political Leaders and the Socio-Political Representation of the COVID-19 Crisis. We have analyzed COVID-19 related political discourse of various political leaders worldwide. And in order to analyze their political style, we wanted to see how they address the crisis, and that gave us an idea of their political style, discourse, values, and management of the crisis. And we found, to make it very brief, two opposite styles of leadership. Professor Velikaya also has analyzed some data for Russia and other Indian colleagues from India. And in later this year, we will present the data all together. But here we are discussing the data we've had so far. And we found two extremes: Trump, Bolsonaro, Johnson's muscular, macho, populist, anti-scientist, and hyper-liberalist leadership on one hand, and on the other, the responsible, supportive, embracing type of leadership of women leaders such as Jacinda Ardern, Solberg, and Merkel, of course. Just to give you a very brief but clear insight of what we found is, if we split the discourse of Donald Trump and Jacinda Ardern, we find that in the first wave, in the first few months of the pandemic wave, we find that politics and economy are the main topics on Donald Trump's discourse, whereas public health is very, very high on Jacinda Ardern's discourse. So you can see that they're basically opposite, because 38% is the amount of public health in Jacinda Ardern's discourse, and 38% is the amount of politics in Donald Trump's discourse. So if we take it as a whole, we can see that Trump addresses the crisis mainly as a war, not as a public health emergency. And he's at war both on the foreign side against China, for example, and on the domestic side against scientists and Democrats. Here's just a clear example of what I mean by that, analyzing his discourse. My administration is marshalling the full power of the American government, and we will do that, and that's what we've done, and we will continue to do it until our war is won. Economic, scientific, medical, military, and homeland security, all of this to vanquish the virus. This is said in Trump's briefing in March 2020. On the other hand, women leaders such as Angela Merkel, Jacinda Ardern, Erna Solberg show a better comprehension of science. They take more responsibility for the nation, display understanding and compassionate feelings to the community. They speak to the community, not to the enemy, nor to business companies. So it's a totally different approach. And here's another, example of the consequences of Trump's approach to the problem. Trump's military and muscular approach to the pandemic is, made simple, because if you look at these phrases he uses, like the hidden enemy, a vicious enemy, the foreign virus, the Chinese virus, a kung flu, just to remind the Asian origin of this pandemic, a matter of life and death, a military operation, an aggressive investigation strategies. So as the virus spreads around the country, no wonder that people turn to guns instead of masks. And that has been a real problem in the United States. Pandemic, and as you can see on the left, pandemic and protests spur Americans to buy guns at a record pace. So instead of turning to masks, the population has turned to the shops to buy guns. And that was, coherent with Trump's approach to the problem. And coherently enough, we can see that his relationship with science during the pandemic has been a very, very problematic one. These pictures are very, very famous. I think that you have all seen them before. The top one is the one when President Trump explains to the world that this pandemic maybe can be defeated by incredible non-medical tools, like using a light inside the body, a blue light inside the body, or other hideous ways that he invented. And this is the reaction behind him on the right. You can see Dr. Fauci. He was his medical advisor. He has been a very well respected and renowned doctor for 50 years maybe before that day, and he just could not take it anymore. He was so embarrassed he had to hide his face with the hand, and Trump did not take it so well, so it didn't end well. You can see below that Trump's very angry at Dr. Fauci when he reacted after having been accused of being an alarmist, because he was trying to explain to the population that this virus is dangerous, that it's important to keep a distance, to have a lockdown, and do all the necessary things from a public health point of view to reduce the contagious rate. And Trump didn't accept this position. He didn't accept it mainly because he had other things in mind. His approach was not only warlike, as we've seen before, but his approach was also businesslike. He says that it is important to have businesses open. It doesn't matter if a few get ill because of that, because the cure may be well worse than the problem itself. He thought that closing down the businesses and the shops could have been more dangerous for the people than the virus itself. And of course, while addressing the problems from the virus, he said that he was speaking of the coronavirus task force about when to open for business. So that's the main problem. And also when he speaks about the virus itself, he also speaks not of public health, but of business again. We have millions of units ordered. Bayer, which is a huge company that we all know from the United States, is one of the companies, a big company, a very big company, very great company. This is, of course, his typical language that you all come to know, I think. Millions of units are ordered, and we're going to see what happens. On the other hand, we see Jacinda Ardern's style, and her commitment to community and science is pinpointed at every discourse. So, for example, we have what tomorrow's package will do is to demonstrate that we are willing to act decisively to give as much certainty as we can in uncertain times. Our decisions have to be based on science and evidence, and this is Ardern's press briefing in April 2020. And this is also another significant sentence, in my opinion. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It means that she fully understands the scientific dynamic of a pandemic, contrarily to Trump's discourse. And she understands it so much that instead of going around saying we have to open up for business and going around hospitals like President Trump has done, Bolsonaro, and also Boris Johnson without a mask and shaking hands with everybody, she goes around with a mask and keeping a distance, and she explains why it is important. And of course, here on the right, you also see Solberg. She's Prime Minister of Norway. This is a press conference for the children to explain the importance of social distance, but to explain it in a manner that nobody gets frightened and in a manner that children can understand it. So it's another way to commit to community and to understand the problem also from a scientific point of view. And she reassures children and people who are scared. She says, it has been special days. Many children think it is scary. It is okay to be scared when so many things happen at the same time. Even if your school has been contaminated, it will go well with nearly everyone. The same with mom and daddy if they are infected. By being home, you're helping other people not to be contaminated and get sick. So by this, she's trying to reassure the children, and it is a totally different approach, certainly not a martial one as Trump's has been. And you can see here an example of Trump's discourses that address profit and Ardern's discourse that address lives, they address communities, they address the fact that people are in fear and that people need to be protected also from their own selfish discourse, attitudes. So it is an opposite style that we can see here once again Trump says, don't forget the doctors. If it were up to the doctors, then of course we should shut down everything. So he's again angry at doctors who suggested that people should keep a distance and businesses should close for a while. But he's angry at this position. He does not accept it. We can't have the cure, as I mentioned before. He says we can't have the cure be worse than the problem. And that's him again objecting to lockdown because businesses must stay open. There will be a tremendous death from that, not from the pandemic, but from the closing of the businesses. Death, you know, you're talking about death, probably more death from that than anything that we are talking about with respect to the virus. And of course, Arden has a totally different approach. She explains that the virus is part of a coronavirus family, and there are lots of viruses out there that can make us sick. I know as well that lots of people are getting questions around how to explain what this is to their children, because they'll be hearing and seeing some of the discussion, and probably might seem a little frightening to the kids. Any tips on how to have a conversation with them? She asks it rhetorically, but then she gives the answer. Well, I've been doing a lot of work with parents and children. I brought my little test virus here. So the easiest way to explain it to the children is that the viruses are basically a tiny ball. And so you imagine that this softy toy here is a tiny ball, etc., etc. So she gives an idea of how to talk to children about this scary situation. But in conclusion, why do we say that women leaders matter? Why do they make the difference? Not only because their discourse is different, but see the outcome of all this. This is the data around the world. When women rule countries, these are richer, less populated, more urbanized, older with a richer welfare and more equal. And guess what? With less cases of death. And look at the data here. You can see very clearly down at the bottom that the total COVID cases where there are women leading the country are much less than the total cases when men lead the country. And the total COVID deaths are almost half. And let's see again here. It's very clear in similar conditions, comparing with the nearest neighbor or the most similar country, you see that they're still scoring best in both criteria. And then again, the same thing happens even within the same country with similar containment measures, but different outcomes. These are the different governors, not the presidents, of course. This is the United States, when women are governors or when men are governors. And you can see that the women's leadership is associated again with fewer deaths during the COVID crisis, and this is shown by quantitative and qualitative analysis of United States governors by the Journal of Applied Psychology. And this is quite, I think, interesting on all criteria that because of all the criteria we see here, that women were rated as more effective leaders before and during the crisis. Based on an analysis of 360-degree feedback data between March and June, their scores were even higher during the first wave of the pandemic. They score best where when it comes to competencies, when they take initiatives, when we're discussing learning agility, when they are inspired or they are capable of inspiring and motivating others, when they can develop others, and all the criteria that you see on the left. So if you look at the data and not only at the rhetoric and their approach and the values behind it, you can see that the values behind it lead to a different management that actually gives us better scores in any way. Some say, some observers, especially from the economic field worldwide, said also on the Economic Forum came out an article saying that maybe male leaders did worst because they think of economy in the first place and not so much of life, whereas women have been trained all their lives to think how to care to for people who are too young to care for themselves or too old to care for themselves. And so they think they have different approaches and that these approaches lead to different outcomes, but this is totally not true. If we look at the data, the actual data, you see that not only women leaders lead to a world with less deaths, but they lead also to a world whose economy is doing best, is performing best than the ones where men leaders are governing. Because if you don't take care of public health, you will have a less developing country in your hands. But as Jacinda Ardern said, it takes strength to be an empathic leader. It's not just a matter of being sweet and compassionate. It is also a matter of how you manage the situation and you take responsibility for what you do. So thank you very much, colleagues. I hope that was clear enough.
Thank you very much, Flaminia. And actually, we should thank Mr. Trump because he gave us a lot of empirical data to analyze and to interpret. And of course, I'm looking forward to our next meeting when we can share our results of research that you organized. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm looking forward to that too.
Okay. Any questions to our colleague Flaminia Saka?
Yeah. Can I ask a question? Yeah. Thank you for your insightful presentation. It was really interesting. Thank you. We have a question. Did you study the public response to such speeches, country leaders' speeches? You showed the effect these speeches produced, and it was rather clear. Did you study any discourses or data which could prove that public reacts in a critical or supportive way to what leaders say?
Not yet. In this project, we analyze, especially in Italy nowadays, we split, competences. We analyze the competences of the leaders, and we have other colleagues who analyze the response of the civic society. So there are two different competences at the moment that they're working, and then we compare our data in the end. Yes.
Of course, that's really vast bulks of data, so it's impossible to do as one research team. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Another questions, please, colleagues? Now, if we have now any more questions, I guess that we can return to discussions at the end of our session. And now I would like to call for Irina Shushpanova because we have to make some changes in our program. And she is my colleague from Institute of Social and Political Studies. And her topic is image of the future, gender aspects.
Да. Yes, dear colleagues, my topic is the image of the future social, political, sustainable development of Russia in the opinion of citizens, gender aspects. This is my presentation. You'll see it. I try to I start to discuss this problem. The report is devoted to the study of the image of the future social, political, sustainable development from the point of view of woman and man. The rapid spread of coronavirus infection, which began in last year, has affected the lives and activities of civil societies around the world. This aspect has made some significant adjustments to the perception of ordinary reality, had a negative impact on the social psychological and economic condition of men and women. Next, please. In this picture, I will show the characteristics of our research. The analysis is based on the result under the title Where I Go in Russia. We have been done this research in December last year in 22 subjects of Russian Federation. Next, please. And this is the result of our research. First of all, I would like to say about the key aspects of shaping the image of the future social, political, sustainable development of the Russian men and women. According to Russian women, they were most concerned about the following problems that pose the threat over the country's sustainable development in the future, such as pollution of atmosphere, soil, and water, research of the earth, but harmful emission from industry and the transport. These problems you can see in this picture were relevant for Russian men, and to the lesser extent, both men and women were considered about the appearance of landfills and landfills near human habitats. And next, this is the continuum of this result. According to the man and woman, the state of social, political, sustainable development of the country in the future is closely connected with the solution of topical issue of air, soil, and water pollution by harmful emissions from industry and transport, as well as deforestation. Russian women were more considered than men about the sources of nature and organic food. It's very difficult. And climate change, the Russian women now say that it's important for them too. Men were likely than women to be considered about the collection, proceeding, and disposal of garbage, and men meant disaster. And next picture. The Russian and woman entitled in the opinion on the development of the future relations of our country with the states. In December last year, the largest men of women believe that Russia should actively develop relations with the rest of the world. Nevertheless, Russian women were more likely than the men to say that Russia should reduce its activity in the international arena and focus on the domestic problems. And men were more likely than women to express the opinion that relations between Russia and the rest of the world should remain as they are now. In general, the image of the future social, political, sustainable development of Russia on the world stage in the mind of men and women is closely related to the activity development of relations between Russia and other states. And next picture. The next aspect of the picture or the image of the future social, political, sustainable development of the country involves the analysis of the opinion of Russian women and men. In the last 5 years, these pictures show us the results. In December last year, the majority of men and women believe that the situation in the field of culture and art, the development of democracy, the fight against the corruption, and spiritual and moral relations, and interethnic relations would not change. All the aspects of the point of view of men and women were the same. According to Russian women, the situation in the international situation of the country and the standard of living of the population will not change in next 5 years. We see it on this slide. And next, we continue our result. According to the aspects of man, did not have a clear opinion. Almost equally, Russian men believe that the situation related to country position in the world could they get better in next 5 years. We'll see it. Thus, the image of the future for man and woman in relation to most criteria has not changed. The only exception the economic and social sphere. Here, according to the man and woman, the future looks very optimistic. And note that Russian women more often than men chose the answer will not change. In turn, men were more likely to talk about the determination of affairs in the number of areas. And next. The majority of Russian women and the largest number of men found it difficult to express an opinion about that kind of society they would like to live in. However, a woman would prefer to live in socialistic society. Men spoke equally about the desire to live in the socialist and capitalist society. The respondents' responses were more influenced by gender view, perception, and life experience. And the next. There was no defined and clear position among Russian men and women regarding the feeling of confusion in the future. Equally, they either found and difficult to answer or answered positively. Of course, the situation of the spread of coronavirus infection has largely transformed their view of men and women on the future. And next, the political sphere is more the dominate of men's interest as opposite to purely women's issue. The largest number of women found it difficult to express a point of view about the future of the country. At the same time, more than one-third of men said that sooner or later the protest of unaffection will begin around Russia. Both men and women almost equally claimed that Russia would exist with this current borders. Men spoke more often about the positive process of unaffection around Russia than women. Men and women considered the following model of building relationship in the world to be the last likely scenario for the future of Russia. For example, Russia is doomed to further disintegration. And next. Sources of information from different positions broadcast the message to civil society. In general, Russian men and women have not formed a sound image of the future based on the information received using difficult channels of communication in the world. The majority of men and women was difficult to access the image of the future based on information received from the radio, on the internet, and on social networks. Also, men and women have difficult to describe the image of the future based on information obtained from the television broadcast. However, men and women agree, they try to build an optimistic image of the future in conversation with relatives and friends, setting them up for positive perception of the world. You can see in this picture. And next, it's continue. Last slide. At the end, I would like to say at the present of the world, it's subject to constant change. The situation of the coronavirus pandemic has accepted the state of uncertainty in men and women. in many aspects of the country's social-political sustainable development, gender groups did not have a clear position on future development. However, for the number of positive, men and women paint an optimistic image of the future development of the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Irina. Thank you. And if you have any questions to Irina, please.
Коллеги, если можно, я бы хотела задать вопрос Ирине. Скажите, пожалуйста, вот достаточно пессимистичное видение будущего, да, россиянами и женщинами, и мужчинами. На ваш взгляд, это связано вот с уровнем доверия к власти или с общей усталостью вот после ситуации пандемии, коронавируса и вот продолжающегося локдауна частично? Спасибо.
Спасибо за вопрос. Я бы не сказала, что совсем все плохо. Каким-то аспектом, наоборот, позитив наблюдается. Например, по экономическим аспектам, социальным. Все-таки мужчины и женщины видят, что будущее будет лучше. По этим аспектам улучшится их положение. Однако в основном они затрудняются ответить. То есть в связи с коронавирусом действительно такое пессимистическое, неопределенное настроение присутствует. В этом вы действительно правы. Что будет дальше, как будет развиваться, будут ли новые штампы, как будет развиваться дальше новый коронавирус, тоже вводит такое состояние фрустрационное, я бы сказала, у наших респондентов, мы это тоже отмечаем. Ну, я надеюсь, что не будет так плохо, и мы здесь отмечаем именно возможные риски, которые дестабилизируют устойчивое развитие в будущем нашего государства. То есть, возможно, эту ситуацию неопределенности сможем переломить, наоборот, создав более приятный, позитивный имидж будущего.
Ирина, если можно еще в продолжение, так как тема действительно очень интересная, вот на мой взгляд, вот позитивное видение аспектов социальной политики в будущем связано вот с очень активной социальной рекламой национальных проектов в социальных сетях, и вот особенно на YouTube, то есть любой ролик, любой канал любого блогера смотришь, и обязательно вот в первую очередь нацпроект демография, да, воспользуйтесь мат-капиталом. Вот можно ли еще объяснить усилением общественного внимания к процессам реализации нацпроектов вот это благополучное видение будущего? Ну, я понимаю, что сложно проводить корреляции, да, их нужно подтверждать, ну вот как бы приближенное мнение ваше. Есть ли взаимосвязь? Спасибо.
Спасибо, очень интересный вопрос. Мне кажется, отчасти, конечно, и есть такая корреляция. Говорить на радио и телевидении о том, что действительно будущее строится в рамках нацпроекта, в том числе в условиях коронавируса, государства и органы власти помогают российским гражданам выживать в очень простых условиях. Я думаю, достаточно интересный аспект, и корреляцию можно тоже посмотреть. У нас в предыдущем исследовании сентябрьском были такие вопросы, как они себя чувствуют в условиях коронавируса. Я думаю, часть это тоже связано с позитивной политикой и информационной политикой, которую проводит государство, создавая действительно положительный образ в будущем.
Скажи в двух словах так, чтобы Ирина перевела для нас как что больших различий нет между мужчинами и женщинами. I would like to organize some translation for our foreign colleagues. Just a moment. One of my students will translate to you the main sense of the answers of Irina.
There is no significance between men and women. But there are some aspects which we can see different. For example, women are most likely to live in socialistic societies. And men prefer socialistic societies and communist societies. Communist societies. The future for women and men really is stable. So in different factors like economical, social will be positive and and the future of sustainable development between men and women will be sustainable development. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for your questions and for answers. And now we start to discuss a little bit new topic for today, because we are going to speak about violence against women. And I give the floor again our colleague from Italy, from Trade University, Luca Mastida. Luca, are you here? So we are waiting you.
Allora, good morning.
Good morning.
I try to share my screen with the presentation with you.
Sì, un po' presto effettivamente. Vabbè, se no lo sentiamo con un altro tipo di...
Ok.
Non so, equivalente,
do you see my screen?
Yes, everything's okay.
Okay. Good morning, and many thanks to the organizer for the opportunity to participate in this conference. I will present data from the research STEP, Stereotype and Prejudice for a Cultural Change in Gender Representation in the Judiciary, Law Enforcement and Media Reporting. The research is coordinated by Professor Flaminia Sacca and financed in Italy by the Presidency of the Council of Ministers, Department for Equal Opportunity. The research considered 5 typologies of violence against women: domestic violence, sexual violence, murder, femicide, human trafficking, and stalking, in the context of 2 different linguistic domains: legal language, with the analysis of 2073 sentences used by Italian criminal codes, and the second domain, the language of the media, through the analysis of over 16,000 articles published between 2017 and 2019 in the main local and national Italian newspaper. A brief look at the Italian scenario with some background data on the phenomenon of gender-based violence in our country. As you can see, according to the agency data provided by the Ministry of the Interior and elaborated by our research group, the most frequent crime, over 50% of cases in Italy, is attributable to domestic violence. This data confirms how the threat to women's safety in our country comes above all from her own family sphere, from her most intimate and private relationship. Here we present in particular the results of the sentences analysis. We have identified in particular 4 main themes: the representation of the victim and the centrality recognized to her testimony, and the presence of 3 recurrent biases: family quarrels bias, jealousy bias, and the bias of raptus. In case of violence against a woman, Italian law recognizes a particular centrality to the victim's testimony. In fact, it can be placed alone on its own as the basis of a guilty verdict. This is a determining legal principle for types of crimes, as we have seen through the Hystat data, which very often occur in private space, in the backstage of couple or family life. A violence, therefore, which is systematically removed from public gaze and which often has no other witness than the victim herself. In the analyzed convictions, we find a systematic recourse to a defying adjectivation in the description of the testimony offered by the victim. Her words are called credible, her reconstruction of the facts is accurate, and the positive adjectives gradually move from the object, the testimony, to the subject who gave it, the victim. The character of the woman victim of violence can be described in the legal language as rational and her personality as honest. This judicial protagonism of the victim must be managed with enormous attention. Otherwise, the risk is that it's the victim who undergoes the trials, not the accused, with the judgment that moves from men's actions to woman's behavior or to woman's character. To better support the solidity of the victim's narrative, judgments resort in several cases to further credibility markers that enhance the testimony of the aggrieved party, but partially reproduce a stereotypical representation of women and of gender relations. Some credibility markers do not seem particularly problematic. The emotionality marker or the fragility marker. It's important, however, when the judge use them, that these attributes are not stereotyped to the nature of the female character. It's crucial to explicitly identify the causal link between the victim's emotional status, her fragility, her vulnerability, and the specific sentimental and power relationship in which the man acted violence. Two other recurring credibility markers are those of forgiveness and modesty. These two semantic constructs are more problematic because they risk to reproduce and legitimize a dichotomous representation of the feminine that identify woman according to a binary logic as a saint or as a prostitute. This frame risks implying that the woman is credible if she is modest or if she proves capable of forgiving. Applying this logic, the risk is so that the uninhibited, resentful, or simply the agentic woman is unfairly considered at least in her rule of victim to be less credible. This stereotypical dichotomy in our society is responsible for socializing an incorrect culture of gender relation, and it is on this cultural ground that violence against a woman then takes root more easily. The first bias we consider is that of family quarrel, when violence against a woman takes place within a relationship of proximity. The adjectives that recur in the description of the sentimental relationship systematically recall the frame of litigation, turbulent, tumultuous, problematic, and so on. The problem is that this bias can act as a factor of normalization of the violent behavior of which women are victims. These things happen. And it can also lead to an incorrect attribution of responsibility, tracing the violence back to the couple dynamics rather than to the action of the aggressor. When the woman is then indicated as the main responsible for the conflictual relationship, the mechanism of secondary victimization is activated. It is a society that systematically brings this bias into the courtroom. The frame of a family quarrel is so well established in our culture that it is often used to frame violence not only by its perpetrator, but also by the victim. The judge's ability, to escape the easy temptation to reproduce and legitimize this bias, so deeply rooted in a society, in its conclusion, in its verdict, is then crucial. The second bias, that of jealousy, is also systematically brought into the courtroom by civil society. Once again, therefore, the ability of the judge not to grant some legal legitimacy to this interpretation of gender violence is decisive. In the example you can see on the slide, a witness described the defendant as obsessed by jealousy. The victim emphasized the intensity of this feeling, speaking of an initial jealousy that over time becomes a real claim to possession. But the main problem lies in the fact that the judge confirmed this pattern by speaking in his conclusion of a pathological and irrepressible jealousy. As we saw in the example just cited, the adjectives that recur to describe jealousy are also important. In fact, when they fall within the frame of the loss of control or the frame of illness, they can accentuate the responsabilizing potential inherent in the jealousy bias. The most problematic frame, however, is perhaps the last one, that of injustice. By describing men's jealousy as unmotivated or unjustified, in fact, the sentence implicitly risks to legitimize prejudice and stereotypes that support this bias. The third and final bias is that of the raptus. The term raptus, the word raptus, almost never occurs in our sentences. And even the press seems to have substantially excluded it from the vocabulary used in the narration of violence against women. Although the term raptus has been practically banned, the frame of an almost uncontrollable impulse to which the perpetrator of violence against women responds in an instinctual way resists into the sentences, finding hospitality in less strong but perhaps more insidious semantic constructs. An explosion of anger, an impetus of wrath, and uncontrollable outbreaks of violence are expressions that can perform the same the responsible function of the term raptus. So we quickly come to conclusion. 10 years after the signing of the Istanbul Convention, Italian legislation on violence against women has greatly evolved. However, the regulatory framework is not enough to change society. As Pierre Bourdieu reminded us, that of law is a powerful word, a quasi-magical word, but the force of the law cannot by itself transform a social world that is not ready to be changed. It announces only what is in the process of development. Law vision, writes Bourdieu, are the recording secretaries of history, not its midwives. So stereotypes and prejudices that overflow from society in the formal public language of the sentences, as in that of the media, show us that the road to reach Istanbul is still long. Many thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Luca. Thank you so much. I know that for my Russian colleagues, this topic is very relevant not only for their research issues, but also relevant for very difficult situations with violence against women in Russia, and especially with some laws which we can say do not help to prevent this kind of violence. So a lot of women organizations here really struggle very intensively with the state to adopt these kind of laws, but for the moment without any success. And colleagues, do you have some questions, any questions to Luca? Because his research method is very interesting.
Yes, I would like to ask a question from a friend from Italy. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, we hear you. Yes.
Yes, I would like to ask my friend from Italy that your paper says that maximum percent of violence against women is in form of domestic violence. So I would like to know that once it takes place, what is the social reaction or social interference?
I'm sorry, ma'am. Could you please introduce yourself and could you please switch on your camera because it's very difficult to understand because we all have different accents. It would be easier. Yes.
Did you ask if you wanted to hear the social reaction? Is that correct? I'm not sure.
Yes, social, how the society reacts to and how do they interfere when it takes place, the domestic violence takes place. What is the reaction of society? How do people react, the outsiders?
Can I take one, Luca? Do you mind? I'd like to answer this.
Yes.
Yes. No, because it's our research, and I think it is a very good question. Society does not react very strongly. Domestic violence is the type of gender violence that is accepted the most. So if you talk about rape, for example, the gender violence can have different, outcomes. If you take rape, people will react. If you take domestic violence, people will accept it much more. For example, we've had a social experiment. A person went in the street, a man, in Italy, I'm talking about Italy here. A man went in the street and said, with his wife, and his wife was telling the people, he's been beaten me. Look at my face. I'm all bruised. Can you help me, please? And the people reacted in a very, very strange manner for us. I mean, we did not expect this outcome, but the people reacted saying to him, to the husband, not stop this, but react to saying, be careful, because if you beat her up in a way that, the bruises are seen, then you can go into trouble. Do you see what I mean? So the domestic violence was so accepted that the people were suggesting the men ways to beat the woman up in a way that he would escape it. He would not be caught by the police because of that. So domestic violence is not very much represented in the paper, although it is the most frequent type of gender violence in Italy. It's not presented in the paper because people think it's quite normal. Still, even if the law condemns it, but the culture is different. The culture, catches up very slowly. So the reaction is not so good, I'm afraid. It's not up to standards, I would say. I don't know, Luca, you wanted to add something to this?
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, it's okay, your answer. I have nothing to add to your speech.
And for us, it was, I'd like to add this, for us, it was quite a surprise, I must say, because of all the types of gender violence, we thought that, domestic violence was understood by Italian citizenship as a problem, as something that people should not be inclined to and should be condemned, but it's not at all. And we were surprised by that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let me also ask a question. Okay. Yeah. So the question first to people analyzed probably, did your study include men and women, or its main focus was on women? And another question, like question 2, are there any organizations which actually increase public awareness about domestic violence issues? And what are the methods that they use to do that? And probably what's the reaction? How do people react to that?
Okay, for the first question, in this presentation, I focused on the analysis of the text of the sentences. It's not a part of the research with people, not woman nor male. There is another part of the research in the project coordinated by Professor Flaminia Sacca, which focuses attention to the narration of the victim of gender violence, with 10 in-depth interview with some woman which has suffered this experience. But there is no part of the research in this moment who have
we do not use, sorry, Luca, just to make it quick, we do not use survey methods here. We have analyzed just the text, both from the newspapers and from, juridical sentences. And also the small part Luca was telling you about is that I have interviewed 10 women that were actually victims of violence, because I wanted them to take back their voice. I wanted them to be the main protagonists, the main actors of this narration, because we found that newspapers and the juridical system represents gender violence in a distorted way. So in order to get the more real story, I wanted to ask the real victims how they narrate their own situation. What we found, just to make it quick, but I think it's interesting to leave you with this addition of the data, what we found is that the culture is so rooted, a culture that admits violence and normalizes domestic violence, is so rooted in our culture that even the victims talk in the same way. They speak the same language of the aggressor. If you talk to them, they will tell you, I don't know what I did wrong. I certainly did something wrong to make him react that way. And that's the voice of the male that's speaking to them through them. It's not the actual situation. They are, so also the culture has been socialized to them since they were young, and they speak with the same voice of the man that aggresses them. And that's something that we need to, to address. And it's very important. I was quite shocked to find this. I was not prepared for this, but this is what came out of these interviews.
Yeah, just to clarify, so it means that man is not usually the victim, so it's woman, right? The victim.
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
The Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And now I think our colleague from India join us with Soho. So I would like to give the floor to Professor Ranjana Singha from India, from Bihar University. Ranjana, please, we are waiting for your presentation.
Hello.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Very good morning to my friends from Moscow and friends from other parts of the world who are attending this conference. And I would like to thank Professor Natalia Velikaya, Deputy Director, RAS, Dean of Sociology Faculty and Chairman of National Social Movement, and Irina Polyakova, with whom I am connected on Facebook, and the whole organizing committee to give me this opportunity to express my views on this conference in Moscow. I wish I were present there in a beautiful Moscow to present the paper myself, but it's online. This my topic is challenges of digital empowerment of women in rural India. So this paper dwells on 2 points. The first is how the digital technology is helping Indian society, the rural India in particular. Secondly, the challenges faced by rural society and especially the rural women. Digital technology has assisted in enhancing the overall condition of rural families. Mobile with multiple applications has played a key role. Rural India is essentially an agriculture-based society with next priority to cottage industries. The locally grown and ethnic product profits has gone many folds with network marketing, milk products, spices, Madhubani painting, embroidered items with women monopoly have gone international with GI tag. Money transferred to bank account and digital payment is a boon for rural women. This paper is based on first-hand study of cluster of 5 villages in the basin of river. There's a famous river called Gandak, and they are named Pir Mohammadpur, Roshanpur Chakki, Rajwara D, Chaksalem, and Bhagwanpur D. These are the area. The area is known for growing vegetables and fishery, being the in the basin of river. They do the business of fishery also. There is no motorable road. During flood, private boats are used for communication. During high flood, administration and NGOs are engaged in relief work. During 3 to 4 months, school health centers remain non-functional during this time. Though youth knows about digital transaction and other activities, but the elders are ignorant and simply refute advanced technology. During awareness campaign, when college volunteers approach them, they get cool response. Use of mobile is restricted to talking to their dear ones or relatives. They do not know about other applications, neither they are eager to learn about these applications. So this paper is based on first-hand study of these villages situated in the river basin that are flood prone. The technique applied is observation, and the tool for gathering the information is the participant interview. The objective of the study is to find out the importance of digitalization, and second, to find out the challenges faced in implementation of digital program in rural India, particularly for rural women. While 43% of Indian men own a cell phone, women with only 28% mobile ownership. Because when they are more interested in, when we talk about the rural women, they're talking to their dear ones or near ones and just day-to-day gossip, and for that they use the mobile owned by the male member of the family. The gender gap in mobile ownership is at 114 million. Women in villages have to face challenges in day-to-day affairs. Alcoholism, joblessness, illiteracy, patriarchal mindset, lack of awareness has taken a toll on women. Husband or sometimes sons demand or snatch hard-earned money. Refusal could take a nasty turn. There can be violence also. Implementation of various government schemes like houses for people below poverty line, toilet construction, wages, ration and cooking gas subsidy, mother and child welfare money to be transferred to women's account is a commendable steps taken by the government of India and expedited by the states. Before that, the money for these schemes were transferred to uh, uh, the account of male members, and they used to take out the money for other things like having alcohol or anything apart from other than the money to be vested in the scheme. So the government decided to send the money in the woman's account. Woman of the house will get the money transfer in her account. Likewise, money for school uniform, cycle, various incentives are transferred to the student's bank account. Now, despite of all these schemes, there are challenges also in rural India. The first one is the lack of awareness. Majority of rural women are not much aware about the digital technology. Even if the awareness program are conducted in rural area, it is men who are asked to understand the program. They are invited, and women are seldom asked to come and join the program. Women are generally busy with housework, house chores, and they are not even interested to engage in programs. The second point is educational backwardness. Illiteracy still prevails to a great extent. People are simply not interested to understand the importance of digitalization. The backwardness minimizes the success of awareness program. Century's biggest disaster, the COVID-19 pandemic and the country's campaign through electronic channel could not create a desired effect in remote areas. People were not aware of the apps provided by the government to know about the condition and where to go, what are the red zone area, and how to approach the doctors and the health centers, because they are not aware of the apps available there and they were not utilizing it. So it was a a dangerous situation in the villages. And the next challenge point I would like to discuss is oblivious of cashless transaction. Villagers from low economic strata are still pawned in hands of middlemen who reap most of their profit through interest. They give them money, they go to them to lend money, and they keep on taking interest, and they don't know how much interest they have paid. And they're not aware, and that they keep on giving the interest, and they are still in their debt. They don't know how much loan they have paid. Over dependency on manual system of exchange is still prevalent in all over India. Leave the villages then. Workers from unorganized sectors prefer to go to money lenders for small loans and are always in debt due to ignorance. And this manual system of exchange is still largely, whether even if we talk about metros, we also go, even if you go to restaurant, you will have to be, to take cash money along with your card. Because when you have your dinner or lunch, and after you finish your dinner, the waiter might come and say politely, madam, the machine is not working, can you pay in cash? So we are always ready with cash in our purses, everybody. So this cashless transaction is still not in vogue. Yes, in big shops and other places, but not in remote areas and small towns. In some places, even barter system is still in practice. Workers from paddy fields are paid in grain or grain plus cash. During rice sowing, the workers are fed with meal, and cash payment is slashed from wages. They are more easy. It is more easier in villages to pay the wages in grains or some other good, rather than paying the wages in cash. So in turn of services, they give grains or some other kind of thing. And the other challenge is cyber fraud. Due to government's Digital India scheme, all beneficiaries have been provided with ATM cards to operate transaction. But the ignorant people ask strangers to withdraw money by sharing secret PIN. The ATM machine centers have now become a center of cons. They stand there that let some ignorant victim come and they will just do the cheating. Unaware people divulge their account details and OTP with unknown people, and through one phone call, the account gets emptied in no time. In 2018, there were over 27,000 cases of cybercrime, online fraud that is called, recorded in this country, an increase of 121% compared to the number of cases just 2 years back. This is the Indian statistic of cybercrime. An article by Mr. Rohit Kapoor says the challenges for adoption of digital learning is the lack of impetus and recognition accorded by the regulators and industry. Even though a number of programs have been announced by the government, there is no separate agency to monitor and evaluate their success. That when the schemes are being launched and implemented, but there is no agency or someone to go to those areas to evaluate or to know about their success and how it is operating and what benefit people are getting from these schemes, and are they able to operate and do the transaction. There is no such agency, accurate agency, to tell about this or to collect data about it. During COVID-19 lockdown, students residing in villages could not avail the benefit of online classes due to poor connectivity also. This is also one of the challenges we are facing, that connection, the signals, at the time we get signal and then the very moment there's no signal, so there's connectivity is very poor. This is also one of the challenges we are still facing, because India is a vast country with a vast population and we have geographical limitations also. There are places which are so remote area that the connection or the agency or the people going there and talking to people is itself a big task. So these are some of the challenges, and where the 70% of the population are residing in villages. This is still very difficult to make the digital India or digital technology very successful in India, because this scheme or this technology should reach each and everywhere. But 70% of population is in some states, like in Rajasthan or Gujarat, the women from a rural area are doing very good. They are using the apps, but not with all the states. The state where I'm studying, I have studied this. This research is going on. It is a very remote area where they are flood affected. They cannot. There's no motorable road. There is no internet connectivity. So in these conditions, the challenges, and the women are their literacy rate is much lower than the men. They are more vulnerable to cyber crimes, or even in case of violence also. There is a facility of registering your violence against you online, but they do not know how to register the case. So, and even if they going to a police station is again a tedious work. And if they ask somebody to register a case online, she does not know what the other person has registered, what he has written, and what he wants to say. What does she want to say will be different from what some other person has done on her behalf. So these are the limitations with the rural women, when their literacy rate and their ignorance, and they are very not even eager to learn, because they are not aware of all these things. So this is overall, we need a very strong and sincere awareness campaign in digitally educate the village population and include rural women in digital future. Otherwise, we cannot say that we are successful, because reaching to the grassroots and last person, and when we talk about women, is a very tedious, and of course it is not a big picture at all. In metros and other advanced town, women are doing very good. But when we talk about the rural women, this is still not a very bright picture in India. So still we have to do a lot to make them digitally educated. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Rajana Sinha, for very interesting report. Especially it's interesting, I guess, for Russian participants, because you know that among Russian inhabitants, 25% live in rural area. And women there are very vulnerable social group as well, as we can see that in India. So I think our countries, which are included in BRICS group of countries, surely should find new solutions to prevent all negative effects of globalization and also of digitalization, because we can see not only advantages of all these processes, but also a lot of risks, as you mentioned. And do you have, colleagues, any questions for Mrs. Simha? Colleagues?
Hello.
Коллеги, вопросы? No. Now it seems we have no any more questions, and thank you again. And I hope to see you at our next meetings. And I know that you are dealing also with gender problems in other ways, so surely we will find another way to cooperate and to communicate. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we have our last speaker. It's Professor Nadezhda Shvedova. She's from the Center of Political and Social Studies from Institute of USA and Canada. She will speak Russian, but I know she prepared the presentation in English. So I hope everybody understands each other. Надежда Александровна, присоединяйтесь.
Благодарю вас. Большое спасибо. Большое спасибо за предоставленное слово. Я хочу сказать еще раз большое спасибо организаторам. И прежде два, так сказать, комментария. Во-первых, это очень отрадно, что данная конференция организовывается совместно с Ассоциацией политических наук. Это замечательно, потому что это дает возможность более широкому ознакомлению с работами друг друга. Во-вторых, я хотела бы также сказать, что вот такое отвратительное явление, как пандемия, она все-таки имеет и свои позитивные какие-то черты, потому что, по крайней мере, сейчас с начала года уже произошла одна замечательная конференции на базе Ивановского университета и журнала «Женщина в российском обществе», одного из самых серьезных, если не единственных, научных журналов, посвященных гендерным исследованиям. Вот идет эта конференция. И скоро, в начале марта, предстоит еще одна конференция, которая организовывает РГГУ. И это потом состоится еще одна конференция, насколько я знаю, опять-таки в Иваново, которая посвящена 25-летию, будет посвящена 25-летию существования журнала «Женщина в российском обществе». Это то, что я знаю. Наверняка идут еще очень интересные события. И, конечно, мне кажется, что нужно было подумать о том, чтобы мы могли, по крайней мере, знать о том, что происходит на соседней, так сказать, грядке. Спасибо большое. Теперь, как уже было сказано, мое выступление, презентация называется «ООН и пандемия. Фокус на гендерном равенстве и устойчивом развитии». Почему сегодня особенно важно международное сотрудничество? Почему важен фокус именно на гендерном равенстве? Какая связь между гендерным равенством и устойчивым развитием? Дело в том, что глобальное сотрудничество и его участники, ну, такие как Организация Объединенных Наций, прежде всего, сегодня стали более важными, на мой взгляд, чем когда бы это ни было, потому что случилась пандемия COVID-19, и потому что существует угроза изменения климата, которые одним усилиями одного государства никогда не решишь. Кроме того, в мире на сегодняшний день усиливаются националистические тенденции, которые сами по себе представляют опасную тенденцию. В связи с тем, что в настоящее время во всем мире от COVID-19 погибло более 2 миллионов, мешает, надо справиться со звуком, мешает звук, фонит. Спасибо большое. В связи с тем, что в настоящее время во всем мире от COVID-19 погибло более 2 миллионов человек, генеральный секретарь ООН призвал страны работать вместе и помогать друг другу, чтобы положить конец пандемии и спасти жизни. Антонио Гутерриш отметил, что отсутствие глобальных скоординированных усилий усугубило смертельные последствия пандемии. И он предостерегает от саморазрушительного вакцинационализма. Женщины, на долю которых приходится 70% всех медицинских работников, относятся к числу тех, кто больше всего пострадал от пандемии и кто возглавляет борьбу с ней. Тем не менее, поскольку женщины несут на себе основную тяжесть закрытия школ и работы на дому, гендерное равенство резко возросло за последний год. Вспышка пандемии COVID-19 ясно продемонстрировала критическую роль женщин-исследовательниц на различных этапах борьбы с COVID-19, начиная с развития знаний о вирусе и заканчивая разработкой методов тестирования и, наконец, вакцины против вируса. В то же время пандемия COVID-19 также оказала значительное негативное воздействие на всех женщин, на ученых в частности, и особенно на тех, кто находится на ранних стадиях карьеры, на молодых ученых. Международный день женщин и девочек в науке. Он был, как известно, учрежден Организацией Объединенных Наций в 2015 году. И пришелся в этом году на 11 февраля 2021 года. Был посвящен теме «Женщины, ученые на переднем крае борьбы с COVID-19». Празднование собрало экспертов, работающих в областях, связанных с пандемией, из разных уголков мира. Почему такое внимание? Цель – напомнить международному сообществу, что наука и гендерное равенство должны идти рука об руку для решения основных глобальных проблем и достижения всех поставленных целей и задач, которые определены в повестке дня до 2030 года. Известно, что в принятой ООН повестке дня в области устойчивого развития на период до 2030-го подтверждается установка на достижение гендерного равенства и учет гендерных аспектов, а также поддерживается ряд целей, в том числе цель номер 5. В этой аудитории это известная цель. Глава ООН подчеркнул, что присутствие женщин имеет решающее значение для достижения целей устойчивого развития. Чтобы ликвидировать гендерный разрыв в оплате труда и увеличить доходы женщин на 299 миллиардов долларов в течение следующих 10 лет. Следовательно, соблюдение важнейшего принципа развития человеческого потенциала, равенства полов – необходимые условия для прогресса. Этот принцип закреплен в международных официальных документах, начиная от Всеобщей декларации прав 1945 года и заканчивая все остальными, безусловно, включая СИДО, и заканчивая самыми последними документами, которые были приняты мировым сообществом. Чем чревато тот факт, что оказываются в особенно угнетенном положении, дискриминируемом положении женщины и девочки. Закрытые лаборатории и возросшие обязанности по уходу – это лишь 2 из проблем, с которыми сталкиваются женщины в научных областях во время пандемии COVID-19. Так заявил глава ООН в своей речи, посвященной Международному дню женщин и девочек в науке. Чем это чревато? Углублением гендерного разрыва в науке и гендерных диспропорций в научной системе, которые необходимо устранить с помощью новой политики, новых инициатив и механизмов поддержки женщин и девочек в науке. Какое сложилось положение в мире сейчас? Женщины составляют лишь треть мировых исследователей и занимают меньше руководящих должностей, чем мужчины в ведущих университетах, что привело к более низкому уровню публикаций, меньшей заметности, меньшему признанию и, что особенно важно, меньшему финансированию. Без большего числа женщин в STEM, то есть в науке, технике, инженерии и математике, мир будет по-прежнему проектироваться мужчинами и для них, а потенциал девочек и женщин останется неиспользованным. Так подчеркивает генеральный секретарь ООН. Данные ЮНЕСКО, только несколько, показывают. Первое. Женщины составляют лишь 3%, особенно низкой доли в области информационно-коммуникационных технологий. А это основа всех будущих рабочих мест практически. Женщина составляет 5% в естественных науках, математике и статистике. Если мы хотим справиться с огромными вызовами 21 века, от изменения климата до технологических потрясений, нам придется полагаться на науку и мобилизацию всех наших ресурсов, так заявила глава ЮНЕСКО Одри Азуле. Именно по этой причине, продолжает она, мир не должен быть лишен потенциала, интеллекта или творческих способностей тысяч женщин, ставших жертвами глубоко укоренившихся неравенства и предрассудков. Таким образом, женщинам платят меньше, их меньше публикуют, их не продвигают по службе. Что предлагается? Первое. Ликвидировать гендерные стереотипы посредством образования. Второе. Изменить социальные нормы. Третье. Поощрять позитивные ролевые модели женщин-ученых. Четвертое. Повышать осведомленность на самых высоких уровнях принятия решений. Пятое. Обеспечить участие женщин и девочек не только в STEM-областях, но и в руководстве и внедрении ими самими же тех инноваций, над которыми они работали, которые принадлежат авторству им. Внедрение политики на рабочем месте и организационной культуры, которые обеспечивают безопасность, учитывают потребности женщин как родителей и стимулируют их к продвижению и процветанию в карьере ученых. Выводы. Продвижение гендерного равенства в науке и технике имеет важное значение для построения лучшего будущего, заявил генеральный секретарь ООН Антонио Гутерриш. Мы еще раз убедились в этом в борьбе с COVID-19. Тем временем отрадно напомнить, что ЮНЕСКО и фонд Лореаль наградили 5 женщин-исследовательниц в области астрофизики, математики, химии, информатики в рамках 23-й международной премии для женщин в области науки. Незаконченное дело нашего времени. Почему важно это дело завершить? Во-первых, женщины и девочки – это половина населения мира, а значит, половина его потенциала. Второе. Гендерное равенство – это одно из основных прав человека, имеет важное значение для достижения мирного общества с полным человеческим потенциалом и устойчивым развитием. В-третьих, доказано, что расширение прав и возможностей женщин стимулирует производительность и экономический рост. Структура ООН «Женщины» предупреждает о том, что, к сожалению, еще предстоит пройти долгий путь для достижения полного равенства прав и возможностей между женщинами и мужчинами. Ближайшие задачи. Первое. Положить конец многочисленным формам гендерного насилия. Насилие в отношении женщин – это пандемия, давно длящаяся, которая затрагивает все страны. Во всем мире 35% женщин подвергались либо физическому или сексуальному насилию. Второе. обеспечить равный доступ к качественному образованию и здравоохранению, экономическим ресурсам и участию в политической жизни как для женщин и девочек, так и для мужчин и мальчиков. Третье. Обеспечить равные возможности к занятости и руководящим должностям и принятию решений на всех уровнях. Опять ссылаюсь и процитирую Антонио Гутерриша, который заявил о том, что достижение гендерного равенства и расширение прав и возможностей женщин и девочек – это незавершенное дело нашего времени и величайшая проблема в области прав человека в нашем мире. А глава структуры ООН подчеркивает, гендерное равенство должно быть достигнуто до 2030 года так, чтобы мы могли предотвратить вялую траекторию прогресса, обрекая детей, родившихся сегодня, ждать 80 лет, прежде чем они увидят равноправный мир. Мировое сообщество – наш ресурс в борьбе за гендерное равенство. Большое спасибо за внимание.
За фундаментальный подход и за интересные некоторые новые вещи, которые мы, конечно, сейчас тоже услышали, и которые будут обсуждаться еще, в том числе вот с вашей подачи, наверное. Вопросы к Надежде Александровне есть? Коллеги, пожалуйста.
Хотелось бы задать вопрос. Меня зовут Иларион Вилин, я аспирант РГГУ. Хотелось бы задать вопрос касательно парадокса в STEM. Мы знаем, что согласно данным последних исследований, страны, которые достигают гендерного равноправия больше, чем другие, там все равно наблюдается парадокс в увлечении женщин в STEM-дисциплины. То есть даже в Соединенных Штатах Америки, одной из стран, где гендерное неравенство определено наиболее всего в дисциплине таких STEM, женщины составляют все еще всего 27% вовлеченности в эти дисциплины, в то время как страны, которые имеют среднее развитие, например, там в Албании, это до 40%. Как поступать в таком случае? Also, I can translate my question. My question is about the paradox of women in STEM. We know that according to the recent studies, the more gender equality, the fewer women are involved in STEM specialties. So, in countries that empowers women, they are less likely to choose math and science professions. For example, in the United States of America, only 27% of women choose to take in the exams in computer science and technology. But in the countries in like medium development, for example, like Algeria, the proportion of women
Надежда Александровна.
Да, вы знаете, во-первых, у меня пропал звук, я не слышала конец вопроса, но начало я слышала, если я правильно догадалась. Простите, пожалуйста, я хотела...
Могу повторить вопрос, заключается в том, что...
Не надо повторять, не надо, я ваше начало слышала, я слышала начало. Я хочу уточнить, вы меня слышите или нет?
Да,
хорошо.
Хорошо. Простите, пожалуйста, во-первых, прежде всего спасибо за вопрос, но я бы хотела его все же уточнить. Что вы подразумеваете под парадоксом? Вы говорите о парадоксе, о том, что в Штатах, я, кстати говоря, об этом писала и неоднократно, но неважно. Вот, что вы имеете в виду под парадоксом? Ваш вопрос в чем?
Под парадоксом я понимаю то, что в менее развитых странах, самых, допустим, развитых странах третьего мира, очень мало женщин вовлечено в специальности STEM, и они их не выбирают. В странах среднего развития женщины вовлечены в область STEM гораздо более значительно, там доходит до 50%. Однако в самых развитых странах женщины все равно, несмотря на, казалось бы, преодоление гендерного неравенства, не хотят выбирать для себя специальности и образование в области STEM. Например, в Европейском Союзе, в развитых странах Европейского Союза и в США доля женщин, которые вовлекаются в эту деятельность, все равно составляет около 20-25%, хотя, казалось бы, гендерное неравенство в данных странах определено.
Спасибо за объяснение. Вы знаете, что это не парадокс, а это проблема. Это первое. Второе. К сожалению, нельзя представлять себе так, что в развитых странах достигнут стопроцентный, так сказать, уровень и не существует гендерных стереотипов. К сожалению, если говорить о том, что, ну, в определенном смысле можно считать это парадоксом, если исходить из такого идеалистического представления, что, скажем, и в Англии, и в Штатах, и, скажем, во Франции существует благостная стопроцентная картина, в которой, так сказать, существует стопроцентное гендерное равенство во всех областях. К сожалению, это не так. Существует колоссальная проблема. В тех же Соединенных Штатах Америки существует разрыв в оплате труда до 30%, ну, по разным оценкам. Короче говоря, если называть ряд причин, почему не идут женщины в Штатах, вы спросили конкретно, в эту сферу, во-первых, конечно, я бы отметила на первом месте стереотипы, распространяющиеся, это раз. Во-вторых, безусловно, присутствует очень жесткая если женщины идут туда, тогда они часто используются, скажем так, ну, в лучшем случае на среднем уровне научных, так сказать, признаний и все такое прочее. То есть эти страны тоже стоят перед необходимостью продвигать здесь осознанную политику вовлечения женщин в STEM-профессии. Это раз. То, что вы сказали, заметили, действительно в странах, допустим, в странах, которых мы не всегда относим к высокоразвитым, там наблюдается выше процент женщин, вовлекающихся в эту сферу деятельности. Как ни странно, это связано с тем, что охват образованием происходит за счет, естественно, и женщин, и эти женщины с меньшим, так сказать, сопротивлением со стороны преимущественно большинства мужчин, которые занимаются в этих науках, сталкиваются там. Поэтому как бы новые сферы деятельности, они больше, это как новые округа для избирательной кампании, чаще бывают легче открытые для женщин, чем для мужчин. Так что тут нет никакого парадокса, на самом деле, к сожалению, это и есть логическое развитие той самой дискриминации, которая существует пока что.
Надежда Александровна, можно задать вопрос? Белованова Марина Юрьевна, РГГУ.
Да, пожалуйста.
Надежда Александровна, как бы вы прокомментировали вот такую новость, что Объединенные Арабские Эмираты вывели космический аппарат на орбиту Марса, и его создала арабская команда ученых, которая на 80% состоит из женщин?
Меня это не удивляет. Я совершенно рада и поздравляю их. Меня это не удивляет. Это доказывает как раз то, что сказали мы вместе с генеральным секретарем в это ООН. Что если мы 50% гениальных женщин в это отбрасываем априори, считая, что они могут только, так сказать, стирать куклы и шить, извините за пошлость, то это мы сами себя обкрадываем. Это блестящие аргументы в позицию нашу тех, кто отстаивает как раз равные возможности и выступает против того, чтобы не допускать по половому признаку. Спасибо за замечательный. Вот мой вам комментарий.
Да, хорошо, спасибо большое.
Спасибо. Еще вопросы есть, Нария? Да, вот еще у нас вопросы из зала.
Добрый день. У меня не столько вопросов, Говорова Наталья, Институт Европы. У меня не столько вопросов, сколько вот комментарий к вопросу Ирины. Да, и, соответственно, и комментарий докладчика. Я хочу сказать, что тому, что женщины, девушки и девочки меньше стремятся получить образование STEM и так далее, тут еще причины кроются не только экономические, но и, например, низкая самооценка. Женщины имеют значение меньшее доверие к технологиям и меньшая осведомленность о инновациях. Причем я сейчас говорю не от лица, скажем, неразвитых стран, так считают в Европейском Союзе. Так считает руководство Европейского Союза, у них есть, видимо, данные, подтвержденные этому. Так что вот это еще мешает. Спасибо.
Спасибо большое, коллеги. Мы уложились в регламент, буквально минуты в минуту, но мы готовы еще 5 минут подискутировать, поэтому если у кого-то еще есть вопросы, комментарии, мы с удовольствием вам слово предоставим. Пожалуйста. Если нет, тогда мы прерываемся на полчаса, встречаемся все на секциях в 2 часа, ну, может быть, там в 2:05. Я обращаю внимание, что ссылки другие. Смотрите, пожалуйста, в программе, по какой ссылке заходить. For our foreign colleagues, for the moment, we have a short break to have some rest. And in half an hour, we are waiting for you in our online meetings. Pay attention that probably you should use another one link, and see you very, very soon. Thanks again for everybody, for speakers, and we are waiting. Don't forget that we are waiting for your articles. Thank you, and see you.
Thank you.
Первая часть завершена. Коллеги, у нас